It would be my pleasure to introduce Dr. Alina New. Dr. Alina von Davier is an internationally recognized innovator in AI and psychometrics. As Chief of Assessment at Duolingo and founder of EdAstra Tech, she leads the development of groundbreaking methodologies that blend AI with psychometrics to create fair and transparent assessments. Her contributions to responsible AI standards exemplify her commitment to ethical practices in education and technology. She's a senior research fellow at Carnegie Mellon University and an honorary research fellow at the University of Oxford. Now moving on to Richard Foster-Fletcher.
And then this guy. After that. How many times? Please do mine first.
All right. Richard Foster-Fletcher, chair of MKAI.org, is a leading advocate for ethical AI and its transformative potential in education. His work focuses on enabling educators and organizations to implement AI responsibly, ensuring it aligns with human values and sustainability. Richard brings a wealth of experience in AI and leadership into his mission of preparing education systems for the challenges of a rapidly changing world. Thank you, Richard, and over to you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I mean, obviously everybody knows Duolingo, Alina, but I hadn't realized just how big the company had got. And it's a huge business now, isn't it?
Well, it's a serious company for sure. It's still a very young company, so there is still that startup mentality of doing things very fast, which is wonderful. But we've been growing, especially in the past few years, so accelerating in terms of product development, in terms of research, in terms of, breaking new ground. So definitely it's a larger company than it was even 2 years ago.
Wonderful. And I'll just say welcome to Anna and Alex, both of who are disguising their names. AM7555, that's clearly a code name. So I think we can all finally agree that Alex must be a spy. So that's at least one thing we're now clear on. Alina, how did you come to get involved with Duolingo then? How did that conversation begin?
That's really a very nice story. So a few years back, when I was still at Educational Testing Service, I was one of the co-organizers of the conference for adaptive testing. And at that time, the person who was developing the test, the settles, came to take a look to see what the psychometricians have to say about adaptive testing. Burr is an applied linguist and an engineer, so he developed the test from that perspective. But then he realized that there is a bit more to a test than what an applied linguist and an engineer could do.
Recording in progress.
Actually join us and started to learn about the type of work that we do. So that was the first time when we met, which probably was 2015 or so. And then in 2017, I was the first member of the technical advisory board for the Duolingo English test. So in a way, I've been with the test since 2017. But then in 2020, once the academic test became so successful, it became clear to the company that they had to invest in an R&D department. And then they reached out to me, and that's how I joined. So I built the team, the whole R&D area for the DT. And this was my third team to build, more or less from scratch. There were a few people there, but was fun. It was really a lot of fun to build something from scratch with a tech company. Before, I built teams at Educational Testing Service and at ACT. So this was a kind of a change from non-profit to a for-profit tech company startup.
Fantastic. And that transition can be very hard for some people. So it's very admirable that you...
Of course, it was interesting because until that time, I would try to convince all the psychometricians that there is value in the AI toolbox, machine learning algorithm, and interesting procedures that we could embrace and embed in our work in psychometrics. And I introduced the term of computational psychometrics sometimes in 2015. And I was arguing for a blend of the two areas. Then I moved to Duolingo, and people with a blank stare, like, what is a psychometrician? Why do we need psychometrics? So then I was in the opposite situation where I had to convince engineers that there is value in psychometrics and that we should pay attention to those principles. And so it was an interesting transition indeed. Very healthy, though, very humbling and very healthy, I would say.
Well, hopefully from both sides. Be a little sting of arrogance that comes from some private organizations sometimes in the face of change and evidential academic rigor. I want to read something briefly. And I mean, should we just say quickly what Duolingo is, Alina, just in case somebody's been living on Mars?
Just in case somebody has been under a stone somewhere. Duolingo is the largest used educational app in the world. It has a product for learning languages that is free. And people from all over the world truly learn different languages. A lot of them learn English, of course, but from the US or UK, people would learn other languages. While, for example, the largest group in Sweden that learns a foreign language is the group of refugees, and they learn Swedish. The same in Turkey. The largest group that learns one language is the group of refugees that learns Turkish. So Duolingo is also a product that appeals to all types of people, younger children, older adults, and everyone in between, and very rich people like Bill Gates and celebrities who are fans of Duolingo, and refugees, as I mentioned before. So I'm very proud to work for a company that has a strong social mission that intends to provide education for free. While there are apps in the learning app itself, they are at the end so that they do not interfere with the learning process. In addition to the learning app, Duolingo also has the Duolingo English test, which is a high-stakes, very rigorous assessment for admission to universities in an English-speaking environment. We are also, we also have a very strong social mission, and we put a lot of work into making the test accessible to people all over the world, both in terms of not necessarily traveling to a test center, but taking the test from home or from a quiet location, anywhere in the world where you have internet access. And by making the experience, the test-taking experience smoother so that test takers can display directly their skills as opposed to, trying to function well under, anxiety of travel and being in a test center.
That is absolutely fascinating, and there's so much to dig into that. For example, we can look at the nuance that's required, and whilst we could admire sites like Udemy and companies like that, fantastic work, but we also know that about 80 to 90% of Udemy courses don't get finished either. So whilst the content might be brilliant, you raise questions about the relationship between the learner and the material there and the continuity and so on. Having Bill Gates as a customer is certainly not a bad thing to have. We once had Michelle Obama join one of these calls, but we could not verify whether it was the real Michelle Obama. We did ask. To this day, it's still possible that that's the case. And then, so I want to read this message out now, because I just think this is one of the most fascinating things in recent times about the business side of Duolingo. So on 11th of November 2022, Duolingo stock fell by about 13%. I wonder what happened in November 2022. Then in March 2023, Duolingo announced the integration of OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 into its platform, launching a premium subscription tier called Duolingo Max. If any of this is incorrect, then do mention this. The strategic move aimed to enhance the user experience through AI-powered features. And as of November 2024, Duolingo's stock closed at $347, marking an increase of over 50% from the beginning of 2024. Now, I might be simplifying things, but I think that's a phenomenal business story, that there was a company that was exposed by the developments in AI, reacted very quickly, formed a partnership, a high-tier partnership, and now has a share price higher than even before generative AI landed in the mainstream. And I think that's phenomenal. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but that's really impressive, I think.
Definitely. Think about, we are a tech company, so we have the right type of people in the company, and among those who actually make decisions. So they do understand AI. And I think this is truly important for high-level management to understand the tools that you make decisions about. I can tell you that actually before ChatGPT was launched in the summer of 21, my team and I started already to use the large language model at the time, which was BERT, and to develop content for the test. So in the spring of 22, so that's about 8 months or so before before ChatGPT was launched, we already put our first complex item on the test that used BERT, that used large language models. So what I'm trying to say with that is we already had that mindset, and we worked with these tools before. So they were not new for us. They were new for the rest of the world, but not for us. They were already part of the way of thinking, and we already investigated different aspects of those in order to make our work not only easier, but also making it a bit more automatic to ensure that standardization of quality.
And that's evident, I think, from the reaction time. So if we compare it's not like for like, but if we compare Duolingo to Chegg, Chegg's been around for getting on for about 20 years, and it is a company aimed at supporting students in their academic journeys. They resisted AI. Their share price plummeted 50%, actually 50% in one day, actually, which is just mind-blowing. And in recent times, due to competitive pressure, they are now starting to announce plans to integrate AI into the service. Chegg may not survive. They are not in good shape now. And it's a parallel story to what we saw, I think, very successfully at Duolingo. And it's just a mindset thing. It's just a way of looking at the world and the changing landscape and ability to change. Alina, should we get to the good stuff? Should we get to assessment and then see where we go from there?
Yes.
So tell us, first of all, what are your own personal views on AI?
So sorry, I work from home, and you get to hear my dogs here. So.
That's quite all right. We like to see some pets around. Sometimes we get some cats on the screen as well. By the way, I was just thinking to guess what languages you spoke, and my guesses are Romanian, German, and English. Am I correct?
You are correct. Fluently, yes. And then passively, I did study Italian and French, and now I'm studying Japanese on Duolingo.
Oh, wonderful. Why not pop in the chat, other people? What are the languages that you speak? Let's see how many we can see in one session here. And I'm just the one at the moment, but I do try and learn German. Alina, let's get on to
Duolingo is waiting for you, so you just need to make a choice and then stick to it.
Yes, indeed. All right, we got 2 so far, plus Alina's 2 others. So what would be your opening gambit for AI and assessment? Because you very much believe there is a case for it, and a strong case, don't you? And a proven case, I think, in your case.
Yes, definitely a proven case by now. We've been working with it for a number of years. AI can help bring a level of reliability and comparability across administrations that was not possible before. And it can also help integrating different testing batteries, for example. In other words, you can have an ensemble of tests used for multiple purposes, and they could be aligned using different types of AI methodologies to make this possible. This has been a desire of many institutions and psychometricians for years, but it was very hard to achieve. And nowadays, AI just allows us to create things that we've been dreaming about. And I think this is true for assessment, and it's also true for learning. This doesn't mean that AI is simple, the use of AI. It doesn't mean one presses a button and you have a response. No, actually, it takes quite a lot of work and a lot of thoughtful work, actually. And one has to be careful about the things that one might not know. So the things that we don't know can be surprising. And therefore, one has to build systems around to make sure that if something happens, one has at least a plan B, if not a plan C, and so on. So I believe that definitely AI works in multiple circumstances. It's not one AI. It's not, Terminator that we hire to do assessment for us. When we say we use AI, what we mean is we use different methodologies, AI-based methodologies in different places in the assessment process. We use large language models to develop items, to help us develop items that were designed by humans. We use smaller models that are our own machine learning models for scoring of essays and for scoring of speech. And then we have AI tools that help the proctors, the invigilators, monitor the assessment. For example, we have tools that are AI-based that evaluate whether a particular text has a high probability of being plagiarized. Or we have an AI tool that monitors the screen and looks continuously to see if there are any indications of inappropriate testing behavior, and so on. So when we say AI, we actually mean multiple and different types of AI tools that are used throughout the assessment process. So it's not only one big thing, and definitely it's not easy. It's not pressing a button.
And do you think there are some institutions, perhaps those more in the public sector, that don't quite understand the nuance of what you just said and do see it as black or white? We either use AI or we don't, and AI does the marking or it doesn't, and don't see the different sort of flavors and how they interact with current processes with the same level of sophistication that you've just described?
I'm afraid that you are definitely right, that there are many people, especially among decision makers, who do not truly understand what it means to include AI in the assessment or in general in education. I've had conversations with decision makers who are asking me whether our AI is empathic, for example. Again, they think of an Uber type of AI that can change our lives and is like one entity. And I try to explain that the type of AI that we use is much more modest and much more as tool-like, model-like, and not like one entity. I believe more education is necessary. And you asked me before why Duolingo has been so successful, including integrating AI. It's because of this ability to understand what AI is and the experience with AI. So having the right people at the table when decisions are made is extremely important. And I would also recommend everyone to learn more about how AI works, especially those of us who are in the position of making decisions about AI.
And those AI tools, are they the things that we might have seen others playing around with, some of the integrations to OpenAI, some of the plagiarism tool detection tools like Turnitin? Are these off-the-shelf ready-made tools that you're calling on, or has Duolingo developed its own proprietary AI tools?
In order for us to develop the large scale, to develop pieces of the items at large scales, we use ChatGPT. But now is GPT 4.0, but we started with GPT. Actually, we started with BERT, as I mentioned before. BERT was the first large language model. So that is a tool that we use. We also use Whisper for transcribing speech. So I would say these are the two big tools that we use that are from outside. Most of the other ones are developed by ourselves.
There was a huge step forward between ChatGPT 3.5 and 4 in terms of its ability to gain accuracy. And now, I raise questions myself around how much human intervention has been in that process rather than just working on the model, although clearly there's been elements of both. But those tools must have been early day BERT, early day ChatGPT 2 and 3. They must have been quite challenging to work with if we think back to the inaccuracies.
Well, yes and no. Yes, in general, but not so much for the type of application that we had. Because the way we do, and I include that in the training that I offer for generating content with AI, my mantra is divide and conquer. So if you have a very complex item, do not try to get GPT to get everything right. Get the passage, get the question, get the difficulty level. If you try to get it all done into one step, it might not work out. So the way we do it, divide and conquer, we're much more prescriptive, and therefore the probability of making errors on the machine side is much lower. So we would first generate, say, passages, and then we would have those passages refined, checked for bias. We'll have machines checking and so filters. Then we will have human reviews. Only those items that are, or those passages that are deemed to be appropriate will go further on to developing questions based on those passages. The questions themselves after that will be reviewed by the machine and then by humans. And so our processes are so tight that there is very little room for the machines to provide an error that would be propagated. It's just impossible since we have every item reviewed by machine and by humans. I don't know if this makes sense, but it has again to do with what I said before. AI is not one thing. And even if you use GPT, we don't use it like for one thing, for the full thing. We use it for pieces in that process.
Yes. So I just want to dig into a couple of more technical questions on that. So first of all, to what extent are humans less involved in these processes than they would have been, say, 3 or 4 years ago?
So we rely on researchers for the design of the new items. Especially nowadays, we want to take advantage of what this technology can offer. And I'm not talking about AI here. I'm talking more about the way we interact with each other, the way we do conferences and interviews like this one. So a lot of our life nowadays is online, which has an impact, in our opinion, has an impact on what are the constructs that we need to measure. Can a test that is paper-based still measure these constructs that are necessary, reflect skills that are necessary in our digital world? So we put a lot of emphasis in the past few years in creating items that are more authentic, that reflect the way people interact with the technology and with each other within this digital environment. So in that context, AI does provide, again, tools for making that possible. So I believe the time is now to have the assessments be more in sync with the way people actually learn and work and interact with each other.
And the second part of that is, if you were to start the same company today with the current abilities of Claude and ChatGPT and others, in what ways would the company be different, do you think?
I don't think we would be very different, because we are driven by the social mission. And we are, of course, there is always the story of legacy code. You build things with the technology you have at on your hands at the time when you first develop it. But now that we are maturing, we are revising and revisiting those legacy codes, and we are updating them continuously. So, and this will continue. So even if you start today and you build with what is out there, in a year from now, you still need to update. So you need to have a good process in place to keep up to date. This is another difference, I would say, between a company like Duolingo and perhaps more traditional educational companies. The ability to upgrade and keep in touch with the best technologies.
Don't we know it? Yeah, we do quite a few courses for the community of business in London that are paid for by the Mayor of London. And we work with one of the colleges to deliver them. And we keep asking for more money, and they keep arguing about it. And they don't seem to quite understand that we have to rewrite the whole damn course every time because it's completely changed since a few weeks or months ago than the last time we did it. So in the broader sense of assessment, I see some questions coming in through Jay's line. I'd definitely love to hear from the room in just a moment. Because the two sides of this, in simple terms, is on, I guess, in the wider academic sense, what we want the most is a well-informed, educated, thoughtful person who's read our work and knows the person that we are and can spend considerable amount of time reflecting on this and feeding back in ways that help us grow and develop in a supportive environment. A little bit like we want a company to look at every single CV that comes in and see the person rather than what's on the paper. And we want every company to have a customer service representative who picks the phone up on 2 rings and knows everything that you need to know and can help you. But that's not the world we live in. And we can't have those 3 things in reality. So in each case, we're going to have to settle for somewhat of a hybrid approach around that. Now, that seems like we lose out slightly, but then if we flip that over and we look at some of the biases, then we realize that the cost of human judgment, and we see this in the prison system and the judicial system, we see it in umpires and referees and so on, and we see incredible biases. Things like the gambler's fallacy, the human cognitive frailty that we believe that the past events will influence the future events, like fruit machines and coin tosses. So much so that we find that judges are more lenient if they've been too strict, they feel, earlier in the day. And, it gets worse when you see that judges are more lenient to women if they have daughters. Judges are more lenient if they've had breakfast. They're more lenient if they've had a good night's sleep. And suddenly you realize you're standing in front of a judge, and what matters almost more than what you've done is how they're feeling. Which is sort of terrifying. And unfortunately, I can say I've never stood before a judge, and may that always be the case. So there's a lot of danger here in relying on humans who obviously believe they're being fair, but in reality are far from it. And whilst all those systems I described, they work very, very well at a macro level. At the micro level, they can be extremely dangerous to individuals who get put in the wrong box or just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Alina, I guess that resonates with you in terms of some of the challenges with the current systems that we have.
Definitely, and we take this very seriously. The potential for bias is definitely there, regardless who develops the best, humans or machines. So we have systems in place to check the quality of the content and the quality of the process, again, regardless who is involved, humans or machines. We were the first assessment program to put out there the responsible AI standards. They are on our website. We already revised them once based on input that we received from people. So I would encourage everyone here to take a look. And we also started to think more about the theoretical framework. So my colleague Jill Bernstein and I wrote also a chapter about human-centered AI, meaning to have the human values at the center of everything we do. And what do we need to put around that in order to make sure that the human values are preserved and supported? We have human-in-the-loop practices, and we have responsible AI standard, and of course, we have validity standards, as we always had as assessment. So these are the elements that we put in place to help us ensure that our tests are not biased. We also have human reviewers for each item, and they receive the training, special training, especially for cultural bias. So they review all the content with respect to cultural bias of different types. And then at the end, we also on a regular basis, we also analyze the test results with respect to what we call in psychometric differential item functioning. So we look to see whether specific groups of people have a lower or higher score than they should have, given how else the rest of the group responded and how else the group, different individuals did on other parts of the test, whether that bias exists for a particular item. So we have quite an sophisticated system in place to make that possible. Now, when I was still in my previous work, actually in 2012 or so, when I was in charge of the large language tests at ETS like TOEFL and TOEIC, that's when ETS started to use the e-rater, which is an automatic system created by ETS to score essays. And at that time, this was one of the first launches of such a system. And at that time, there were a lot of concerns from many people that, the humans are the gold standards and we always need to compare the machines to the gold standards. Well, I started to look, I have some research done in this area, and I realized how poorly the humans fare in evaluating those essays. And this is again what we see nowadays when we compare the machines and the humans, and we see where the humans fail. The humans fail, as you said, depending on how they feel. They also fail in terms of fatigue. And the worst part, especially, and it's visible when you have two raters for the same essay, two human raters, humans will tend to score, to grade in the middle of the scale. Because guess what? If they score in the middle of the scale, then the probability that they will be far away from the rest is much smaller, and therefore they won't be called back for retraining or even punished that they are outliers all the time. And we see that in famous language tests that I don't want to call, that use two humans for their essay writing. So check that out if you don't believe me. You can see a narrowing of the variance on how the human on each item, and that would lead to much narrower scores in the end. Because the full information is not taken into account. We discovered that, I discovered that tendencies, as I said, around 2012. So then at that time, we put in place systems to retrain the raters and make sure that they are told to go back and score as appropriately at the extreme of the scale. But this requires an intentional intervention. So someone here asked in what way the machines are more reliable than the humans. This is one way. The machine will not try to score in the middle to make their life easier, as humans unfortunately do.
Yeah, you see, that's so fascinating. I remember I used to be a member of Toastmasters, and I won one particular speaking competition, and a friend of mine was counting up the marks, and she said to me later on, "Do you want to know what you got?" I said, "Well, of course I do. Tell me." He said, "Look, there were 7 judges. 6 out of the 7 judges scored you from 7 to 10, and one of the judge gave you 1 out of 10. I was like, well, I'm not sure it was a 1, was it? And so, of course, your reaction to that, you say that, well, they should naturally take out the top and the bottom score because of the bias. That person's clearly got an issue with me, or they wanted someone else to win, and well, whatever, life goes on. But that shouldn't count, and neither should the 10 probably, because the 10's probably somebody who likes me as well. But what you're saying is actually that, okay, that's an extreme example, but the more extreme scores actually might be the more realistic schools, because other people are doing the opposite, like you said, and they're just putting it somewhere in the middle, so that they're not sticking their head above the parapet, they're not taking any risk, they're not showing up. And so actually, it's two stories here, isn't it, about those extreme ends of this, or perhaps not the extreme, but certainly the outer ends. Just a reminder of the complexities that you must face every day in this kind of work.
Fascinating. Sometimes we work like detectives, we have a hypothesis how things should be, and most of the time they are different. And then our job is to figure out why they are different and how much does it matter, and whether this is something that has to be addressed immediately or not, and what's happening there. I think it's also relevant to talk about what type of system one can put in place, be that for humans or be that for machines. So the first thing actually that I did when I joined Duolingo was to put in place a quality control tool. We call it AQUA, and we have a few papers on it, is Analytics for Quality Assurance in Assessment. And AQUA nowadays is an automatic system that uses both model-based metrics as well as observed metrics about the scores. And it evaluates the scores continuously. And if anything happens that is outside that what we think should be normal variation, would bring an alert to us on Slack. So the experts would receive an alert immediately, and then we go and investigate what's going on. And this saves, not only that it saved us a lot of time, because otherwise we should have done this manually, but it also, again, standardized the process, and it brought in an urgency, because if you would have that done by humans, you couldn't do it continuously, while the machine is doing it continuously. So that was the first thing I've done, actually, when I joined Duolingo. Meanwhile, we also have a similar process. We call it AQUA-P, which is an quality assurance system for the item pool, where we evaluate, for example, the journey of an item, the exposure, the item parameters. We have the distributions of all the item parameters, how much of the pool was used, when, and so on. And the third system that we built is something that we called, the item factory. The item factory is a system where we have both machines, automation, and humans working together. This is also where we use the GPT to generate items at scales. And then we have humans who come in and review them using the same platform. And then we have a system of metrics, both for the humans who do the review and for the machine. So that's only for the administrators of the system who evaluate how many hours the humans spend, how many items did they do per hour, do we see any outlier, how many items they rejected, do we have an indication on why they rejected a particular item. So having systems in place to ensure that you do a good job is extremely important. And I would say this is important regardless how much AI versus how many humans use. It doesn't matter. Quality should be above the how, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, but it is eye-opening as well, the amount of work to go into this. I really want to hear from the room, but I just have one little thing, and obviously I hope I'll get maybe one more question at the end after we've spoken to the room. So first of all, Alex Monaghan is fairly annoyed at me for changing his name to Sir Alex, but he also doesn't seem to be able to figure out how to change it back, which I find quite funny. But that aside, how do you communicate this to your users, Alina, or do they just not really care?
It depends which users. For test takers, they don't really care. What they want primarily is that they want an assurance that the test is fair. So what we would communicate towards them would be, how the test looks. We give them opportunities to practice for free. And then, we have information about how we ensure that the test is fair. So test takers care about that contest part of an assessment. There is an older paper of Paul Tholam from the 80s, I believe, where he said high-stake assessment is both a contest and a measurement piece. So test takers care mostly about the contest part, where they want fairness. If we talk with universities, what they care about is the quality of the test. So here is where we would bring information about the constructs that we measure, about comparability to other tests, and also the universities are interested in knowing that our tests are valid. So we work with different schools to show that those who enter the school based on our tests do as well as as students who took any other test. And then last but not least, the universities also care about how secure the test is. Because of course, if you take it from home, there are different types of security breaches that are possible. And therefore, they want to know how do we deal with that and what type of assurance we can give them that our test is secure. Fortunately, we've been working on this for a while, so we have quite a lot of evidence about the type of methods that we have in place to provide that. So in other words, nobody directly is questioning the use of AI or the use of something else. What they want to know, and I think it's as they should, is this a good test? Does this test indeed provides what it claims to provide? And can I use it successfully? This is what people want.
Yeah, and I guess if there is a recourse there, isn't there, that you can explain these things in more detail if somebody makes an inquiry or questions these sorts of things. But let me not take up any more time. The mystery of Michelle Obama seems to have been solved now. So thanks for that piece of humor. And Jaisal, let's hear from the room and let's use as much time as we have left. Alina, what time do you need to depart? On the hour?
I'm okay. I do have 4 minutes after that.
Oh, wonderful. We might have a few more minutes. Jaisal, over to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. We have some questions in the chat and we have some comments. So I'll just go through the questions first. So Olivia has asked, are there any papers, academic, technical, or blogs around psychometrics and testing, perhaps from Duolingo?
Yes, I would invite everyone to Google Duolingo, the Duolingo English Test Research. It's important that you put, excuse me, Duolingo English Test so that you can see the psychometric work. So not just Duolingo Research, but Duolingo English Test Research. And yes, you'll find our white papers, and you'll find also peer review publications that we were able to share either through things that were on archive or wherever possible. We do try to provide an open access. So you will see there are quite a lot of papers there.
Thanks, Alina. Eva has asked a question. How can AI improve reliability of testing? My understanding is that it is a predictive tool that will guess the best fit, but will not compare two documents, but I may have it wrong.
Not necessarily wrong. It's not one thing. AI, again, is multiple things. And I gave an example on how AI used for scoring can increase the reliability. It's definitely better than the humans, because humans tend to omit information at the end of the scale, especially when they get tired or when they don't want to be outliers and they want to stay closer to the majority. So if you have a test, any test out there that has essays that are scores by two humans, pay attention. The reliability is going to be terrible and you lose scale. Check out the tests out there, like famous language tests that use two humans for their essay writing. Check the full scale of that writing scale, and you see they lose information. So that's a way in which AI can help, providing a full grade that can take into account the extremes of the scale.
Absolutely. I think this is a wonderful example, and people can explore themselves of the input that you have given, Alina. There's another question that I can see Peter Scott has put in. How do you articulate the return on investment in AI to leaders who need both short and long-term benefits that exceed costs?
Again, it depends on the company. It's not quite an abstraction, because for a company like ours, that is a tech company where most people who work there are quite knowledgeable about AI, the return on investment is truly fantastic. I mean, like about 10 times, if not more. If you are a company that does not employ very good AI scientists and AI engineers, then obviously everything is more challenging. You don't even know how to hire them, to be honest, because it depends even who makes the hiring decision. It depends on their knowledge of AI and technology. So it's a much complex situation. Often they make the very poor decision. They would hire people who sound confident, but might not be the technical people they actually need. And that would lead to other poor decisions down the road. So it's relatively hard to respond in abstraction. For us, it has been around 10 times.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Alina. I think I really enjoyed the answer that you have given. It's thought-provoking, and I will be thinking after the event about it. And there's one last question from Merve. How do you assess reasoning and evaluation skills in the digital tests?
So it depends again on the test. If it's a test for, say, language, as in our case, we don't put that much focus on evaluation skills. It's a language test. But if you develop a test, so I've been also advising a company called MKAI that is actually based in the UK, and they have a critical thinking test. And we've been working on creating some of their items with the help of AI. So I'm working with a scientist from South Korea, in particular with Dr. Yo-Jong Shin. And she has been leading some research on using AI for developing questions for critical thinking tests. Now, we have not yet tried to develop new types of items, but that would be next. At the moment, they are trying to develop the same type of items using this technology.
Thank you, Dr. Alina. And I would just read one or two comments that have come in. There's one more question. How do you solve or address the lack of data on many languages? I know some of the Gaelic examples are very strange, for example, because there's not much Gaelic text online. I'm sure the same applies to many languages, some with millions of speakers.
Well, again, for my team, that is not our problem, because I work primarily on the assessment for English. We also build assessments and prototypes for French and Spanish. So again, that is not a problem for us. Obviously, the problem is more for my colleagues who develop the content for the learning app that where they teach different languages. So the learning app still, like we, have a combination of human developers, human translators, and machines. Yes, indeed, there are more challenges for languages for which there is not enough information. Now, nobody will claim that everything is perfect, but I would say there is a significant progress, and things that we learn in one language, as the time goes, can be used and translated or adapted in different other languages. So it's not that there is nothing that is being done for those languages. It's just that it might take longer to achieve the same quality.
Thank you, Dr. Alina. And there is one or two comments that I will go through. So Alex has mentioned some cultures or groups have understood values for particular scores. The French 1 to 20 school marking system, the NPS 1 to 10, but only 9 and 10 are positive rating system. This is one of the comments. And then there's another one from him that interestingly, we don't compare autonomous vehicle performance to human performance. We compare autonomous vehicles to perfection. So these were some of the comments that had come in. And over to you, Richard. I think I've really enjoyed this, and to know that how much societal impact you're having. My son is already using Duolingo to learn Hindi, and I think it's wonderful. And to understand that how important it is that people and leaders at every level and the recruitment people also know the latest and emerging technologies, and that can make so much difference to bring the cream crowd or the talent into the industry, isn't it? Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Alina, and back to you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaisal. Yeah, I've got a couple of things on my mind, but I just wanted to go around the room. Is there anybody that would like to themselves raise a comment or a question? As in the microphone and speak out. No? Okay, well, give me a wave if you change your minds. Alina, so from the company perspective, I'm curious, with all this incredible amount of work that's gone into the fundamentals and complexities of assessment, Duolingo perhaps is tempted to broaden the range of subjects and areas that are covered. If you think about like Khan Academy and organizations like that, is that something we might see in the future?
I believe so, from everyone. I mean, from all other companies as well. We launched on the Duolingo side, we launched a video call. I don't know if any of you have seen or interactive with our character called Lily. Did anybody see that? Well, please check it out. I mean, you do need to be at a higher level in your language and to have a Max. I think that's mostly for Max users, but other free users also get it once in a while. It's an incredible opportunity to practice your speaking skills, talking with Lily. As I mentioned before, I'm learning Japanese, and despite the fact that I have more than 2 years as a streak, I'm not very good. It will take me a lifetime to become better even in Japanese. But nowadays I get to talk to Lily, and I would listen once and I do poorly, and then I go back and listen again and again. I think it's an amazing opportunity that we have. And for the test, we also are working on embedding more speaking onto the test with this technology. So the same with the tutoring part in the Khan Academy and others that are trying to build the same type of systems.
I've got to ask you then, so how did you choose the characteristics of Lily?
So first of all, I didn't, but we have creators for this character, and the character comes with, each character has a full persona. So it's a much more similar approach as you would have in a movie or in a cartoon or in, I don't know, Sesame Street or, other type of shows that have run for a long time in multiple languages, multiple countries. So each character has multiple expressions, a full persona, different voices. We had actor voices at the beginning. And nowadays, of course, it's all machine generated. And we are also bringing the characters on our test because people by now are very familiar with them, and we want to make the experience of testing be more natural as defined in these digital environments.
Okay. And she briefly replaced your CEO, I think, on Investor Call.
Indeed. That was so much fun. Yes. We had really announced, to the public earnings call. Yes.
And so Lily's one of the characters then. She's not the only character. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. We have multiple characters. Yeah.
And I'm sorry if my bias was showing through there, but I was curious in my line of questioning whether there was a sense that people respond better to certain types of, I know she's a cartoon character, but still in that sense, all the best, Peter, see you later. There's a complaint, isn't there, that a lot of Alexas are women, for example, and I'm sure you've heard that one. Was that on anybody's mind as you were creating this character?
So we have multiple characters of all genders, but people love Lily. It's just an incredible. She has so much. She has followers, has so much fans all over the world, and that's why Lily. Has
anybody fallen in love with Lily? Do we know?
I do not know quite that in that way, but for sure she has followers. She has fans. It's just incredible. There are things that are more powerful than our own intentions, if you want. So when it was created, Lily was just one of the characters, but now she took off. So she's definitely up there with Duo. As you know, Duo is, everybody loves Duo as well, or hates him.
Well, that's where you want to be, isn't it? Love or hate is far better than being uninterested.
Very intense emotions toward this.
Exactly. I try to be loved or hated, Alina. That's always my goal in life. I seem to succeed so easily with some of the comments I get from other people. Anyway, that's an aside. And there's a couple more questions that came in. So we're at the hour. So for those that need to dash, completely understand. We happen to be gifted a few more minutes with Alina, so naturally we're going to graciously accept that. But if you do have to go and you've got to be somewhere else, another meeting, of course, we understand. And thank you so much for joining us, Alina. But just maybe a couple more from the group, if you don't mind, so that they came in, I think, after. In fact, Jason, would you mind picking it up since you're so brilliant?
Yes, absolutely. So there are a couple of more questions that have come in. Olivia has asked, what is your personal opinion in the age of AI protection against underrepresented voices and languages?
I think, well, there are, again, multiple ways of responding to this. AI can be a tool for the underrepresented voices and languages, can be an ally. And for people who work in that domain, AI for sure can be an ally. Now, for the majority, AI can help identifying bias. And humans can put in place systems and standards to make sure that existing biases and prejudices are not perpetuated in the application that we are talking about. So there are these two perspectives, what people themselves can do, and they can do so much more nowadays, and what the majority can do with systems around whatever application they put in place. Quality control.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alina. I think having the right design, quality control, and governance are keys to building the right systems in place. How good is real-time translation? Will this reduce the need for humans to learn other languages?
I think we learn languages not only to translate. We learn languages to marry. We learn, like in my case, we learn languages to live somewhere, again, like in my case. We learn languages to learn because we love the food, because we are fascinated about the culture. I am interested in the aesthetic, Japanese aesthetic, so that's why I'm learning Japanese. I think we learn languages for different reasons. So I do not see a danger in having a bespoke set of systems that do a translation in real time that is of quality.
Thanks. There are a few more questions. So Lubna has asked, how would Lily differentiate between a dialect and a mispronunciation?
I don't know. I don't know, honestly, and I don't think anybody knows. There are, again, multiple elements that would come when someone speaks. Could be mispronunciation, could be dialect, could be noise around. Usually these systems look at intelligibility. So it doesn't really matter what accent you have and what's the cause of that accent, is whether you are intelligible to that system as it was designed. And of course, the effort that is being made is to train it on a very diverse set of accents and dialects.
I think something that is related to the accents and dialects that you mentioned, Anna has asked, there are so many variations of a language in different countries. How do you handle that? For example, Spanish around the various countries.
I believe our Spanish is Mexican Spanish, so the one that is being taught in the course. I don't know for sure, so I haven't tried that. Our Portuguese is Brazilian Portuguese. I think there are decisions that are going to be made, and then the design of the rest of the content is going to try to be as broad as possible.
And this is the last question that I can see in the chat. Could we revive dead languages using AI voice to re-engineer what the sounds could have been?
I'm not sure I understand the sound for what?
The sounds could have been. Could we revive the dead languages using AI voice?
Possible. I would invite all PhD students to consider that. It's a research question. So applied linguists and AI engineers and AI scientists. So you are welcome to work on that. I mean, if you have a person dedicated, you can do a lot of things.
Yeah, I think one of the examples that's given in the chat is indigenous Bolivian, one of the lost languages. I think all of the questions are now covered. Richard, over to you.
One thing I forgot to mention, by the way, is if you send me a personal message on Zoom, I'm pretty sure it appears on LinkedIn Live. So just be careful if you do. Nobody sent me anything too personal, but I ought to make people aware that the limitations of the software mean that it's literally sharing my screen. I mean, I just on that last topic there, and let's just go for maybe a couple more minutes, but I think there is a case that we want to try and capture as many languages as possible and allow AI to hopefully, continue the understanding and use and culture and so on of those so that we don't lose them and they don't die out, because a lot of those even aren't written down, are they? But we're losing many languages a year. One interesting language that you have on Duolingo is Esperanto, isn't it, Alina? For those who don't know, this was developed in the 80s, maybe the 70s, designed to be a universal language for the world. Now, it didn't turn out to be that way, and there probably wouldn't be a Duolingo if that had worked out in that way. I just wondered if you had any views on Esperanto, Alina, personally.
We also have Klingon.
Do you?
Oh, yes, we do.
Very
for one. Yes, check it out.
I will. Amazing.
So what I said before, we are not learning languages just for the sake of translating information. There are so many other reasons why each of us decides to learn a language. And it's the same with Esperanto. People have their own interests and their own passions, and the same with Klingon. So this is why we are not concerned about the success of AI in making perfect translations.
Yes. My forefathers did some terrible things around the world, but it does mean that a lot of people speak English these days, meaning that it's not actually necessary for a lot of my friends that I know of who don't speak two languages. But I think to your point, Alina, when you go abroad and you show that you've taken the time to learn some of the language and then inherently some of the customs and culture, because you can't learn a language without understanding the point of what you're saying, we all know the different reaction that you get. It is profoundly different in terms of how you are welcomed and how you are treated when you show that sort of interest and care for how other people live their lives, which is another wonderful reason to learn a language. Alina, we always finish with the same question, and you have the great honor, I think, of being our very last interview of the year, and it's been certainly one of my favorites and wonderful to be with you. We ask, what would you have us, what are we, 24, 25 people plus a few bots here? What would you have us ponder? What sort of question would you like us to think about as we go about the rest of our week?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I enjoy the questions and the conversations as well, so thank you. I think we need all to remember that we are in this together. And I would invite all of you to ponder what did it take to make AI successful in your own life and your own work. Because again, it's not only one AI, there are different applications of AI, different parts of AI, and think how it can be an ally. There are so many voices out there that are, trying to create fear for whatever reason. Sometimes they are honest, sometimes they have other interests. So I would say just think about it. In what part of your life AI can be useful? And how can you make that application better for everyone else? So keep that in mind, keep the social part. We are all one, each of us is one little piece of a larger environment, and we are different and the same at the same time. And AI can help us, and we can choose in which direction. And let's ponder on that at the end of the year.
Let's ponder on that indeed. And I don't want to diminish anybody in this room. And I thank you all for being with us together in this session and being so forthcoming with the questions and comments. But Alina, obviously, as our special guest, our honored guest today, and the preparation that you've done, the conversations we've had leading up to this, hugely, hugely grateful, not only for your time today, but actually the incredible work that you do as well. And in these distraught times that we live in, where unfortunately more people in the world than we would like see the differences between us and not the similarities, it's organizations like Duolingo who in fact are bringing us together, who are bridging those divides, in this case through language and culture. That couldn't be more important. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you so much. And thank you for acknowledging that role of Duolingo. This is also why I'm there. So I really appreciate the social mission, and thank you. Thank you all, and have a wonderful holiday season and a great new year.
Thank you, and hopefully we can stay in touch, Alina.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.
Look after yourselves, everybody.
Thank you. That was
Bye.
wonderful.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.